Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? You can hear me? Oh, okay. Thank you, Darren. Thanks, Kiana. Um, Good morning and welcome to the final installment of Pass the Mic. My name is Robin, for those of you who don't know me, and we have a lot of new persons in the call, and I'm still admitting persons in. So just quickly, for those of you who don't know what Pass the Mic is a panel discussion series that we had for over the past year, where we talked about saving and investing money, then we talked about entrepreneurship, and then more recently in February, we talked about how to balance relationships and your career. And today we're going to talk about home ownership. So we have 5 amazing panelists who are here to give their professional advice on owning a home and the process that we need to go through, especially in Barbados, and especially as young professionals. So before we get to that, I just want to go over some housekeeping. As you can see, everyone is muted. So in order for you to speak during the question and answer segment, you're going to have to raise your hand, and then you're going to see a raise hand button. And once that is done, it will allow you to speak. Also, we had a lot of questions come in, so thank you for that. But with that being said, we want to get through those questions first, since people did submit them ahead of time. And what we will do is I have myself and my committee secretary, Vicky, who will be checking the chat for questions during the Q&A, during the presentation. So that's how that's going to work. Also, because we're all limited on time, if we don't get to your question, please don't feel bad, but you are being encouraged we're encouraging you to reach out to the panelists after the session to just get your questions answered one-on-one. Okay, so without further ado, is Keisha here? Okay, let me see if we can find her. Participant.
Good morning.
All right, Keisha, you could go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to our first presenter. Her name is Miss Kavita Singh. Kavita is our relationship manager at RBC Royal Bank. Kavita is an experienced lender who has invested over 5 years of her career in financial risk analysis and portfolio management in both retail and small business sectors. A career on the front lines of customer service allowed her to couple portfolio growth with maximum customer satisfaction. An avid believer in financial freedom, Kavita strives to equip persons with the ability to utilize credit to their greatest advantage while simultaneously securing their future for themselves and loved ones. Kavita will speak to us this morning on banking and finance.
Thank you so much, Keisha. Good morning, everyone. I am incredibly thrilled to be a part of this morning. I'm going to try to share my screen now, Robin. Let me know how it works. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, awesome. All right, so the part of this presentation that I'm going to be covering is the financial aspect. The first question that we usually get is, at what stage do you engage the bank? And it is typically recommended that you engage the bank prior to doing your house shopping. Think of it as knowing your shoe size before you go into Payless to buy a pair of shoes. We will offer a pre-qualification certificate, and it allows you to shop with confidence. So that way you don't go choosing your dream home and then realize, I don't think that this can really fit my pockets. So always make sure that you stop at the bank firstly. During that first visit, what we're looking for is that you have stable income. So proof of that is obviously crucial. In that case, you ask for job letters, income tax statements if you're self-employed, those sort of documents. You should also be able to show that you have good credit history. So if it's that you have a credit card currently, you have an existing loan that you've been paying well, all of that will be taken into consideration. And then also as part of the house shopping process, you should show that you at least have some savings to rely on. There are different types of mortgages, which we'll get to shortly, but you do want to have some sort of equity injection, even if you are advertised for 100% financing. And you'll understand the reason for that a little later as well. So the reason financial institutions require the documentation, and we hear a lot, oh, y'all asking for a lot of documents, is because we need to be able to determine that you'll be able to manage this loan comfortably. Remember, it's a 30-year commitment at most, so we need to know that over this 30-year commitment that you're stable and that, you know, we can rely on you being able to manage your payments, and not just to repay us, but to make sure that you're comfortable. You never want it to be a case where, you know, paying your mortgage is taking so much from your income that you can't do anything else with your life. You can't take a vacation, you can't go, you know, do anything outside of paying your bills. So one of the key things to determine that is to be transparent with your loans officer or your banker. Let them know about all of your deductions that you have currently, if you have any savings at the credit union, if you have whatever the case may be in terms of your financial assets and liabilities. Being as transparent as possible will help us to determine if you can qualify. So in terms of meeting your expectations, letting us know upfront comes in very handy. The different types of mortgages right now that you'll find, you'll have land loans, construction mortgages, and purchases. Each mortgage type with each institution is different. It is not a one size fits all. So don't think because, you know, your neighbor works the same place as you and she managed to get her mortgage, that it will work exactly the same way as you. You don't know what the financial situation is. What we would normally do is try to calculate your total debt service and your gross debt service to kind of help us determine what you qualify for. Your total debt service really shouldn't exceed more than 40% of your income. What that means is that when we calculate all of your bills, 40% of it has not, you know, been exceeded, in that you're not going to use most of your money in debt. Based on the savings plan that you have currently, we can then recommend which mortgage product might suit you. For example, construction mortgages tend to take up a lot more savings. So it's always wise to have that discussion prior with your banker to ensure that you do have enough of a savings buffer to take care of that. Upfront costs that you can expect going into this: valuation costs, deposit, legal fees, bank fees, and stamp duty, as well as property insurance, which Dave will cover. So there's a quote that I like: cost and worth are two very different things. One of the key things of this process is getting a valuation of your property done. A valuation will allow you and the banker to know that you have an accurate appraisal, and it's a best decision for you, value for money. It also ensures that the bank has sufficient collateral in the event that we have to recoup our funds. So God forbid something happens, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, we're still able to get our money back from a forced sale if need to be. So you found your dream home. What's the next step? Your real estate agent will provide you with an offer letter. We then use that letter to get an actual approval for you. And then you'll have an in-depth discussion with your banker regarding different types of interest rates, whether it's flat or reducing, fixed or variable. It'll also cover, you know, how long the loan will be and your actual deposit amount, etc. So you've gotten your formal approval from the bank. Congratulations. That's always a good thing. We will give you a formal offer letter that outlines our terms and conditions. You should review this with your attorney. And it's important to note that when you sign this letter, it is a binding contract and it has to be treated as such. So anything adverse that we find out after this point can make or break this contract. So again, remember, binding contract. In closing, disbursement of your funds for your home is dependent on all of the contract conditions being met. So again, we come back to having comprehensive homeowners insurance or all risk contractors insurance, depending if you're constructing or not, making sure that you have a salary deduction in place if that is possible. You've made your deposit, you've paid up to date your land tax, all those different factors have been met. And that is it for my part. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kavita. That was extremely informative. At this point now, I'll introduce our very own road director, site engineer, Jay Gooding. Jay is a graduate of the University of the West Indies Monaco campus with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering and a Master's of Science in Building and Construction Management from the University of the West Indies Cape campus. He is currently a site engineer with over 4 years experience within the construction industry. I was involved in several major projects through Barbados and Jamaica, inclusive of hotels, commercial head offices, and luxury condominiums, just to name a few. As a motivated and determined young professional and a graduate member of the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers, Jay is looking to combine his academic training along with experience to make further progress of his professional development and career in the field of project management and engineering. Please welcome Jay Gooding.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Siobhan, for the introduction. I don't know if everybody can hear me. Okay, great. Let me share my screen. You all see clearly? Okay. Again, thank you for the Road Rock Club of Barbados for having me as a panelist. My presentation will be based on the building aspect of owning your own home, the construction aspect. And for me personally, I like to think of construction in 3 phases. Not necessarily just home building, but overall construction. You have the pre-construction phase, which is usually the phase that is basically the pre-planning phase before you actually get into physical construction. You have the construction phase, and then you have the post-construction phase, the phase after handover is done or the construction is completed. So the pre-construction phase, these are 4 steps that you can consider to ensure that you went through the correct planning, documentation to actually start your construction. The first one I would recommend would be to plan and know your budget, just like Kavita said. For instance, if you're in the market to get a new vehicle, you're not going to go into a Lamborghini dealership and not have the budget for this Lamborghini, right? So that is very important for sure. You're going to have to begin to consider your budget from the very moment you decide to build a home. Chances are you will need a construction loan or mortgage. I don't think most persons buy a home cash, but I personally can't buy a home cash. So you need to realistically know what you can afford, you know, how much you are willing to spend, how much you're qualified for financially. The best advice would be to seek a financial advisor during this step. The second step, after you've secured your financial advice, would be to choose your lot, or what we in Barbados say, buy a piece of land. If you do not already own your lot, now would be a great time to talk to your realtor to make a purchase. You know, it is very important, especially towards the budget, because you want to know how much money out of your budget is going towards purchasing land. You know, this information is also useful to other construction consultants that you come into contact with to help you with your project. You know, some factors that you can consider in choosing the right piece of land is things like location. Is it in close proximity to supermarkets, gas stations, any particular zone and restrictions? How is the water access like in that area? And soil quality, you know? After you finish choosing your lot, I would say the third step is to line up your team of professionals. Find the right construction professionals for your job, and this can consist of architects, engineers, and general contractors. Usually, these are the 3 main persons you usually have on a construction project, but they're not limited to only these 3. It also consists of land surveyors, interior designers, project managers, quantity surveyors, you know. And for instance, an architect, the reason you may need an architect is you obviously need a building plan. The general contractor needs something, he needs a plan to work off of. you know, and like the previous slide, how I spoke about choosing a lot being producing useful information for these professionals. The architect, for instance, may need to know where your home will be going so he can know how to design your home, the orientation to design your home. You may want your bedroom to be on the side of the home where the sun you get majority sunlight, you know, or the engineer, for instance, the soil quality will be very important to him because he needs to know how much emphasis to put in the foundation of your home. If you're building a home, say on beachfront property on the beach, that foundation is going to be different to building a home in an area with a stronger substructure. So that would be the third phase. The third step. The fourth step, I would say that a lot of people tend to neglect would be to negotiate a contract. You know, get a written contract for each professional involved in building your home. It also makes the relationship with that professional much sturdier. You know, so this contract can provide stages of payment. So for instance, throughout this contract can document at what stage you make a payment to your contract. So whether you pay him when the foundation is done, the first story is done, second story is done. It helps deal with additional costs because construction most of the time usually has a lot of cost overruns unforeseen for circumstances. The project schedule, and any disagreements that you may need to settle, whether it be in court or in the presence of an arbitrator. This is a good time to seek an attorney or a legal assistance with this. So now you've completed the first step, which is the first phase, which is the pre-construction phase. That's just simply an overview, but there are lots of other things that goes into the pre-planning of construction. The second phase will be the actual construction phase. What should you consider when building a home, especially in the tropics? Well, first of all, natural disaster resistance. Barbados is in the Caribbean, and lots of persons come to the Caribbean for the paradise, the sun, the beaches, but something we're also plagued with is the hurricane season. You know, building to resist natural disasters such as hurricanes, earthquakes, and flooding is very important. One of the considerations that you can implement in your home are things like hurricane traps. What are hurricane traps? Within a hurricane, the most common form of damage a home usually suffers is the roof being blown off. The reason for this is because the roof wasn't connected to the building structure efficiently. Hurricane traps help in this area. You know, think of a home or any building for that matter as an entire system as one. You know, the foundation being one system, and that should be efficiently connected to the building envelope, which is the walls of the structure. And that should be efficiently connected to the roof, you know, and reinforce shear walls as well. They help transfer the loads directly to the foundation. So therefore, you're gonna obviously need a strong, flexible foundation again. I spoke earlier about choosing where your home will be built, or the lot, or the piece of land. Again, if you're building a home, say on the coast, the foundation will be different to building a home with a rockier or stronger substructure for the foundation. And hurricane shutters as well, for the doors and the windows. Another consideration will be renewable energy and sustainable sources. Climate change, as we know, is a very prominent global threat to the world right now, and it will be advisable to create a sustainable home and reduce the environmental impact. It's not only healthier, but it saves utility costs. So you can implement things like solar PV panels, not just for water heating purposes, but for electricity using the sun. You have wind turbines. That's not as popular, but there's some people who utilize it. Rainwater harvesting tanks or rainwater harvesting systems. In the Caribbean, we get a lot of rain. Just as much sunshine, we get a lot of rain. So utilize that rain, save that rain. You could use it for purposes of, you have a little garden in the back, you wet your plants, you want to wash down the house, wash down the car, use it for gray water purposes. If you even take it a step further and implement a water filtration system, to have this water filtered and you produce potable water, potable drinking water. You know, theoretically, Barbados is seen as a water scarce country. So every little bit counts and helps. You know, use Energy Star rated appliances. These appliances are appliances that basically use a considerable amount less electricity, 50% less electricity, water efficient plumbing fixtures. There's some toilets that when you flush them, save quite about a good amount of water as opposed to traditional toilets. Another consideration you could look at is utilizing open plan designs with more sources of light. You know, try to look towards homes with open plan designs, which excludes a lot of hallways, walls, and doors. It also makes a more inviting layout. This promotes better airflow, ventilation. It tends to give the space a larger feeling. You know, more windows equals to more natural lighting in the home, which is less artificial lighting, less strain on the electricity bill at the end of the month. Finally, you can also look at leaving room for expansion. You know, keep in mind the scope for future expansion, as the current structure would have to be designed to accommodate it later on. Us as millennials right now, we may be interested in owning our own home or building our own home. And at this present stage, you might probably be single, or you may have a significant other. But who's to say later down to come, your family doesn't expand, you don't get children. You know, you won't want to be in a situation where you build a one-bedroom home and then you get children, and then you need to look towards expansion. You didn't take that into consideration in the initial stages. You know, we're also looking for other possibilities of income, you know, produce possibilities of creating rental income with extra rooms, you know, student rentals as well. Tourism, you can have persons coming into Barbados. Again, you can rent out an extra space in your home, look to expand by building an extra room. All these are considerations that we could take into factor. So you've been through the pre-planning stage or the pre-construction stage. You've been through the construction phase itself with some considerations living in the tropics. And now you should consider the post-construction phase. I now own my first home. What else is there to do? You know, about a lot of persons also neglect this area because they think, well, you know, my home is finished and I don't need to do anything else. I already spent enough money. But you should take into consideration property maintenance. You know, just like, for instance, if you bought your brand new car, what are you gonna do? You want it to last as long as it possibly can. So you're gonna make sure it's serviced every 3 months. Make sure the tires are changed every 3 months. You know, make sure it's validated every so often because you wanna take care of it. The same thing with a home. Increase the lifespan and the safety of your home by applying regular property maintenance programs. Address any visible cracks in the wall. You know, have an engineer address any cracks, because the crack may seem small now, but eventually it will grow and grow and grow to a point where it's very costly to repair, or it can be hazardous to the safety of the occupants. Make sure you clean drains regularly, replace discolored or peeling paint, fix any leaking sinks or pipes, because this can lead to moisture. And we all know that moisture will lead to mold, which is a health hazard. You know, and try to control the dust in basements, ducts, and other areas. So those are the three phases that I would consider in building your own home: pre-construction, the construction phase, and the post-construction phase. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that everything was clear, and I'm open to any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. That was a very informative presentation on building our own home. Our next panelist that's going to speak to us is Lisa Coyle. She is a real estate agent with Terra Caribbean. Lisa has spent over 12 years in the real estate industry and joined the Terra team in 2016. Lisa is very passionate at what she does and focuses on residential and commercial sales and rentals. Her past experiences in the tourism industry and construction-related fields benefit her in her real estate profession. Lisa has completed courses online with Trampton Realtors in the United States and continues to fuel her education with ongoing course material. A member of Viva and a board member of a private school, she still finds time volunteering at her alma mater, traveling with her family, relaxing on the beach. Lisa ensures her clients are continually kept abreast of the industry and operates on a platform of ethics, honesty, and integrity. A fun-loving persona, Lisa will make you feel at home and enjoy your real estate experience. Lisa will now speak to us on real estate in Barbados. Lisa?
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much for inviting me. I hope the information I share will be useful. If not, just don't tell anyone where you were this morning. I just want to make a quick disclaimer. This is not my forte. I'm much more comfortable with one-on-one. So and I'm not a millennial. You may not notice on screen, but anyway, here I go. So I'll do my best, guys. So just bear with me. Okay. Okay. So you may probably ask quite a few questions on your first home. And the first thing I want to say is you need to decide, why would you use an agent? Well, quick and easy, we're free. So that's the simplest thing I can tell you. But as all professionals, we have a fiduciary duty to any information you give us is going to be private and confidential. And we are acting on your behalf. So I don't want you to feel at all anything you tell myself that it will help any process, as you will see. The other reason good to use a real estate agent is that we have a number of properties. Once you tell me what you're looking for, we have a number of properties on the market I can show you. We will also know about new developments. We also have like discrete listings, and it will save you hundreds of hours from you basically searching through hundreds of websites. We can also tell you what the market price is, a good history on the property or the land, and the covenants. Covenants is basically what you can and can't do with the land. This is important, you know, as Jay mentioned, when you're buying a piece of land, are you going to be a farmer? Can that land bear, you know, animals? In residential areas, you can't have, you know, chickens and sheep. So these are things you need to know. What documents you will need. The bank, we usually just go through these basic documents because chances are you would first go and see Kavita, and then your next step is probably coming to see me. So she would have run through the documents, but there are also going to be some other documents you may need. So we will get those for you. And we will also help you through the process when you're going to look at a property. There are things that you may not think about, but there are things that I go in and I look for. You go in and you say, oh, this is a pretty color, or this is a nice, lovely piece of land, oh, this garden looks beautiful. They're not the things that I'm looking for you. I'm there to protect you. I'm going to be looking at the three big issues. I'm going to be looking at the foundation. I'm going to be looking at the roof and the electrical and plumbing. Not that I'm any of those, but I'm going to see, does the roof have moisture? Is there a leak? Is the floor flat? Are there cracks in the floor? These are all telltale signs that I'm looking for to help you choose your right property. I also have something called a toolbox, and this is great for networking. So during this process, you're going to say, Lisa, do you know a good plumber? Do you know a good electrician? Do you know a good engineer, Jay? Do you know these things? And I will then connect you. And then when it comes time to negotiating, I will be there hopefully to help you in the right way to negotiate. We're never going to pay the asking price, just saying everything's negotiable. So the next slide here, go down. Why look for a home? Why not rent? I'm happy renting, why not? Truthfully, sometimes renting is the best thing. It depends on your life choice. Where are you in life? That's something you have to assess. But at the end of the day, why pay someone else's mortgage? When you pay rent, your money disappears, okay? Now, Kavita also mentioned when you're building assets. With assets, it will give you the ability, so once you buy your house, you're starting to build your assets, right? And this will give you the ability in the future to get other loans because you will then have a good credit rating. It also, depending on what you purchase, if it's an income earning property, it will also give you a good ROI. Now, ROI means return on investment. So if you had some money saved, okay, where would you put it? You can put it in bank savings, you could put it in the stock market, you could put it in a friend's business. But all of those, within reason, have good and bad sides. If you put it in real estate, it's pretty much mostly secure, but it's choosing the right property. So those are all factors. And the main thing is, why choose a house? Pride. This is your investment. It's the largest decision you will ever make. Once you look after it and you maintain it, you will watch it grow. Again, pre-qualified, pre-approved. Pre-qualified, I will love you dearly if you go to the bank and get your pre-qualification letter. As Kavita says, it's kind of what size shoe. I usually tell people, don't you know, like when you're going to the supermarket, how much money you have in your wallet? And just real quick, I actually asked a millennial this the other day. I said, don't you know how much is in your wallet? And they said, No, I just buy what I want and put it on the credit card. So that went poof. So that idea, I like the shoes, Kavita, because that makes more sense. So bring your pre-qualified letter. Let us shop for what makes sense for you. I don't want you to be disappointed after going through a whole lot of houses. You fall in love with one and then can't get it. So next thing we got to think about your journey. I will probably have a discussion with you, and I want you to think about before you come to me, or maybe when you come to me, or any real estate agent. You don't have to come to me. There's a ton of us out there. I want you to think, what do you see as your future home? Is it a house? Is it an apartment? Is it a townhouse? Is it land and you want to build your own property? I want you to also think the location. Where would you like to live? Do you want to live in St. Philip near your family? Do you want to live on the beachfront? Do you want to live, you need to think about this. And where do you see yourself in the next 5+ years? As I said, you're looking at a loan from 15 years minimum, probably up to 30 years. So are you going to be here in Barbados? If not, get a plan B. Make sure that you know, whoops, so sorry about that. That's why I'm not good at this, guys. Make sure you have a plan B and it's rentable, okay? New homeowners fees. So this was talked about briefly. If you said to me you want to live in an area that has, gated and so on, the gardens look after you, look after for you, we're going to have homeowners fees, HOA fees. This is generally a percentage of the cost of running the development. So it's shared by all the homeowners. And we will tell you what those fees are and what they kind of cover. Now, people say, okay, well, I don't want to pay homeowners fees. I just want my own home so I don't have to pay fees. Well, truth be told, with a private home, you still have to pay those fees. You still got to look after, paying the land tax, maintaining the garden, looking after the pool, paying the water, the electricity, all of those things. So these are things you have to consider when you budget, that although you get your mortgage, can you also afford to pay these fees after? Now, when you're coming to your end of your search and we found your home, there are going to be purchase fees. Kavita mentioned those. The attorney, Anice, is going to mention those also to you. So all of this is all about budgeting, and we will help you along the way as to know, what's involved here. I'm going to go through these really quickly because I know they're covered in depth with each party. So the standard purchase procedure, you find your home, you're happy with it. We do an offer acceptance form. Now on that form, you'll see something saying subject to contract. That means you're not bound to buy this property. All this document means is that the owner is willing to sell you this property at the agreed price and you've agreed to buy it at this price. But that starts the process, okay? After that, you decide on what attorney you're going to use. From there, as agents, we will then do what we call attorney instruction letters. So that just puts all the parties in touch. From there, the attorneys take over and they do all their searches and so on, which Anice will go into. And just skipping to number 5 is once everything is done, you've seen your landmarks, then the property becomes yours. But I'm not going to go into too much of that because I know Anice has a whole bunch of information for you. Tips, this is real important. Your home is the most important purchase, as I said. Always budget for yearly expenses. And trust me, they come when you least expect them and when you have no money. And they come in threes. Don't ask me why they come in threes. Purchase energy efficient appliances. Jay mentioned that AC, if they don't have an AC units that are already energy efficient, buy them, all your appliances, your stove, your fridge, and so on. I would also recommend watch your leaks. You don't want to have moisture damage because that's something that you would have to definitely deal with. Your toilets and your sinks are the 2 main areas you tend to get leaks and don't notice them. Your smart meter on your water thing, your plumber can actually help you with that. If you press a few buttons, don't ask me again which buttons, but it can actually tell you if you have a leak at all in your house, and then you can start searching for it. Maintenance, every 3 to 5 years, you need to paint your house. You'll see a lot of people have not painted their houses. I think this is a major mistake. Concrete is porous, and if you don't seal it, it will cause moisture no matter what. So use good quality paint and get the contractor to pressure wash your house and paint your house every 3 to 5 years. pest control, termites, they will eat you out of house and home. So make sure you do, contact one of the pest control companies and make sure every quarter that they come and look after your home. And start a trusted list of contractors and maintenance personnel. So if you have a leak and your guy has been really good, or you call your friend and they've told you, oh, this plumber is fantastic, keep those people on file, because it's good to use them on a constant basis. They already know your property. So that kind of brings me to a very short version of, buying your own home. And I often tell people, the truth is buying a home is equivalent of getting on a roller coaster. There are ups and downs, there are twists and turns. You're going to have good days and bad days. That's what we're here for. But at the end of the day, you'll be triumphant. So choose the right team, your attorney, your agent, and your lender, and this will make your journey so much easier. So I just want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer at any time. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This gives us a lot to think about. But as you would have mentioned, you will be needing a lawyer. And at this time, I would like to introduce Anice Granville. Anice Granville is a practicing attorney at law and a partner of the firm Lex Caribbean. She joined the firm in 2005 and currently leads the firm's property development and mortgage practice in the Barbados office, and takes responsibility for his presence on the legal panel of the banks and other financial institutions. She also takes responsibility for the firm's advisory portfolio on property development generally, and advises numerous corporate and individual clients on acquiring and or disposing of real property in Barbados. She has been in legal practice for over 21 years, and during those years has distinguished herself as a commercial and property development lawyer who has successfully built and developed her expertise in areas of corporate and property finance and security, and the sales of residential and commercial assets involving large property developments, condominiums, and hotels. Anice is admitted to practice law in Barbados and Guyana. Please welcome Anice Granville.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I was just struggling to unmute my mic. Let me try to share my screen. And yes, there it is. Oh, good. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be part of this. Like Lisa, I mean, even though it might look so on screen, I'm not a millennial, but I'm going to try to keep this real relevant. So I'm here to present on the legal aspect of conveyancing. So you've gone through qualifying yourself for your loan. You realized from Kavita that you qualify for this lovely condo unit up on the West Coast. You've gone to Lisa and you found your property. The next thing obviously is to actually get the legal process done, the transfer process done. So this is where you come to your lawyer. And I will attempt to take you through. What I will do is just a general overview of the legal process. And in order to keep this relevant for you, there are two aspects of the general legal process which you will find that you take responsibility for, as strange as that sounds. And as I go through, I will point out which those are. So before you even get to your contract, there's some pre-contractual matters which your lawyer will ask you about. By the time you get to your lawyer, you may have signed an offer and acceptance letter. Your lawyer will want to know that that letter was signed subject to formal contract, because your lawyer wants to know that by the time you get to your lawyer that you don't already have an obligation to buy, and that you have a little space to actually understand what it is you're taking on before you start to bind yourself to it and start to pay money. So this is to say that anything you're going to do before you get to your lawyer's office must be done subject to formal contract. Lisa has already alluded to this. When you sign your offer and acceptance letter, it will be subject to formal contract. And The reason why this part of your transaction is important is because the principle of caveat emptor applies to property purchases in Barbados. I can't stress that enough. You take on full responsibility for what you're going to buy. Your vendor's only obligation is to prove that he owns the property. I mean, you can take his representation on it, or you can ask him to see a conveyance. But what you need to understand clearly is that you alone are responsible for checking the quality and the suitability of the property that you're going to purchase. What does this mean? Inspection, inspection, inspection. If you're buying land alone, inspection might not be such a hard thing. I mean, how hard it is to just look at a piece of land, but still, you want to make sure that it is what you think you're buying. You've seen it on paper. You want to go down to the actual property and make sure you like the topography of the land, or make sure you can actually see the property is not overgrown too much. Make sure you understand that the property is what you think it is and people aren't raising cows on it, or somebody doesn't have a house on it. And you know, you alone are responsible for what you're going to take on, what you're going to buy. If you're buying a house, this is a good time to talk to Jai. Because, as I said, you're taking on the responsibility with respect to the quality and condition you're buying as is. If you're not the kind of person who can just look at the house and tell what the defects are, physical defects are, then you need somebody to help you. Lisa has pointed out that she, as part of her process, she looks at the roof, she looks at plumbing, and she would help you along this process. That is a good thing for you. But if you feel that there might be something more, or maybe the property is aged, you may want to call in your site engineer. But so this is still on the general principle that you really are buying the property based on your own inspection as purchaser. So the vendor has no obligation to disclose physical defects, right? Even if the roof is falling down, once it is patent, once it is something that you can see by just looking at it, the vendor doesn't have to point it out. He just shows you the property and he takes it that you are prepared to buy the property with the roof falling down, the fence falling over, and so on. So that's all at you. Obvious encroachments. If when you go to inspect the property, you see the neighbor has a lovely flower garden on the land, neighbor watering the garden and thing. If it is obvious to you that there is an encroachment, as in somebody else is using part of the land, you should ask a question about it. Unless, of course, you want to take the property with the neighbor on it, which I don't think anybody wants to do, right? Overhanging roof. Is the neighbor's property overhanging the fence? This is a good time to ask a question about it, because if it is obvious, your vendor might very well take it that you're good with that. All right. Easements. So if you notice a foot or vehicle track on the land, which looks quite worn, there is a chance that somebody might be using the land to access maybe an adjoining land, and you should ask about it, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've purchased the property and then somebody is traversing over your property. And I mean, and they have the nerve to tell you, but they have the right to do it. So it is important to inspect the physical state and condition of the property and to point out items that you need rectified before you actually sign. This is also the stage where if you think it is not something that can be rectified, and you want to take the property in this state, this is a good time to renegotiate the price. Not after you sign the contract, but now, right? So in terms of you doing your physical inspection again, if you're going to be buying a house with inventory and fittings, you want to make sure that you have a list of what the inventory and fittings and fixtures are. You don't want to end up in a situation where when you close, the stovetop is gone, AC unit gone. So if you want the house with the AC unit, you have to make it very clear, and you have to have it as one of the things listed that will come with the house. I know sometimes vendors might say, but oh, I was never planning to sell you that. So that might call for a little bit of negotiation and renegotiation of the price. but the idea is to make sure you understand clearly what is coming with the house and what is not. Another aspect that you should take responsibility for is understanding covenants. You should take full responsibility for understanding covenants that come with the land or the townhouse or condominium unit that you're going to buy. If you're buying land, there is a good chance that there are restrictions on the specs, on the building specs for that particular area. And I'm sure Lisa will go through that with you, but you want to know that if you're planning to build an apartment building, then you will need to find a suitable location. A lovely little residential development might not do, right? And Jai also mentioned soil quality, and this is a good time to understand exactly if you're going to be buying land as well, that you understand what you want to build versus where you're building and what the covenants are. Lastly, in terms of pre-contractual matters before you actually get to your lawyer, you should know, and a lot of people don't understand this up front, but you should know that as soon as you sign your contract, the risk of the property passes to you. What that means simply is, once you've signed the contract to buy the house, God forbid there's a hurricane and the house is blown down, you're still buying that house. So simply put, what lawyers advise is that as soon as you come to them, make sure you start talking to your insurers. And this might be a good time as well to understand what your lender needed for insurance in terms of comprehensive house insurance. And you might want to make sure that whatever insurance you're taking, you want to put over the property you propose to buy, kind of complies with the requirement that the bank was asking for if they're going to be lending you money. So I hope I haven't scared you off, but a lot of what you do, a lot of what you do before you, a lot of what happens by the time you sign your contract is really your responsibility. And your lawyer will ask you these questions. Have you inspected the property? Do you understand what the covenants are? Everything is good to go? Fine. It is at this stage that you really should come to your lawyer and engage your lawyer. And you are paying your lawyer to make sure that you have a binding contract and that the contract reflects exactly what you want to buy in terms of legal description of the property and in terms of what you get at closing. And what you want at closing is vacant possession. You don't want property and anybody else on it. You want vacant possession and you want good and marketable title. So your lawyer comes in there and you're good to go. In terms of essential clauses, I think I've alluded to the fact that the property will be sold as is, but this is a very big clause in any sale contract, right? You have to understand that your vendor will insist that the property is sold as is and in the present state and condition. And so there is no obligation on the part of the vendor to put it in a better state unless you guys have expressly agreed that somewhere along the line, the vendor will fix a few things. But otherwise, don't expect to sign the agreement and then ask for things to change. Once you've signed the agreement, your lawyer will take on the investigation of title. This is where your money is well spent on your lawyers. You can just sit back and wait for the process to be done. Your lawyer will take on drafting and reviewing documents and dealing with your lender as well. And that's the fun part. So the other aspect of this thing that you take responsibility for is the closing costs. I've had, Kavita has mentioned it, Lisa has mentioned some of it, but I've tried to put down a list. And even though I have this at the end, I would strongly suggest that you understand what this is at the beginning and to understand if you really want to get into the deal. So closing costs associated with your new purchase will include legal fees. These are calculated on a scale. Legal fees for your lawyer for the purchase. You have legal fees for the bank if you're borrowing money. You will have to pay the cost of title searches and title investigation. Cost of surveyors boundary status report if your bank is asking for this. Land tax. You will have to pay a portion of the land tax up to the end of the financial year. Lisa mentioned homeowners dues. If you are buying into a condominium development or a residential development, you may have homeowners dues that you will need to consider to pay at this stage as well. Stamp duty on your mortgage, which is calculated at the rate of 0.6% of whatever it is you're borrowing from the bank. And then you have a nominal recording fee. Now, your lawyer is going to go through all of this with you, but when we're working on behalf of the bank, we like to send these costs. We can actually do an estimate of these costs and kind of forward them to your bank or even forward them to you before you actually finalize your arrangement. So in a nutshell, that's the legal process, the general overview. I try to give more focus on the things that you're responsible for because you fully expect your lawyer to take on their responsibility seriously. All right, so that is it for me. And I will take your questions later on.
Thank you so much, Anice. You've definitely given us plenty food for thought. Our next and final panelist is going to be Dave Boyce. Dave has been in the sales profession for the last 12 years, of which 7 are with Sagicor. He's a trained insurance professional and is licensed to advise and recommend multiple types of financial solutions within the insurance industry. He is certified in principles of insurance and insurance operations, along with a COP qualification. Dave is currently pursuing his professional designation in financial services. This exposure allows Dave to be well-versed in the following areas: financial planning, retirement planning, home and business loss prevention and coverage, life, medical, and motor insurance. Dave loves his career and loves to bring awareness to all about financial planning. He has a passion for adding value to others and uses his career as one avenue to do so. His dream is to enhance the lives of Barbadians by educating persons about income protection, retirement, and the basis of succession planning for their household. Over to you, Dave.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I'm just going to share my screen. Just a sec. Can you guys see my screen? All right, perfect. All right, so today I'm going to present on home insurance and home ownership and how they go hand in hand. So I'm going to start off my presentation with a quick share. And what a quick share is that persons usually tend to be very relaxed or laid back when it comes to acquiring insurance. However, because of the nature of insurance being a risk business, it is important that persons think about insurance early on in their lifetime. So I met a guy who was in his early 40s, and he was thinking about having a mortgage. No, he would have met with persons prior to me earlier in his life, but he decided to wait till that point in time. And the challenge that he would have had after we finished eventually paperwork and so on, and we were doing the medicals to make sure he qualifies for the policy, is that he was denied because of a health situation that he was unaware of. And as we know, as life goes on, these things can happen. Everyone won't have them, but the important part of this story is to make sure that you do what you can early so that it doesn't affect you later in life. And insurance is one of those things that I would urge persons to sit with someone, myself or someone that you may know, and try to look at starting it as early as possible. Now, there are 2 types of insurance that you would encounter when you're going to purchase a home. And I'm going to start with the life side. There's life insurance and general insurance. So we're going to start with the life side. And you will encounter these 3 while going to purchase a home. It's creditor's life insurance, term life insurance, permanent life insurance. Now, creditor's life insurance is usually done through the bank. They usually will be the persons that would facilitate this type of coverage through an insurance company. And what creditors life insurance entails is that it is a reducing term policy. What that means is that your coverage amount, your coverage, say 300,000 at the time, will reduce as your loan balance reduces. So if you borrow 300,000 from the bank, and say a couple years later you're at 200,000, your insurance matches the exact balance of your loan. It's for a fixed time. It will end as soon as the loan ends, and it has no cash values. So Kavita is should be quite familiar with this. I believe they would offer these types of policies. These are not done directly with the insurance companies. They're done through the banks via an insurance company. And next on we will go to is, I will start with is term insurance. Term insurance now is done with an insurance company directly, so you can speak to myself and or someone you may know for this. Term insurance is a low cost insurance. It is also for a fixed term. However, unlike creditors life, you dictate the term. So you can have it ending when your mortgage ends, or you can have it ending after your mortgage ends. And the coverage is fixed, so it does not change. Unlike creditors insurance, it will remain the same throughout the duration of your mortgage and throughout the duration of the policy. And this is important because you want a scenario where if something happens to the individual paying the mortgage, that the family is protected and not only the loan being protected. So this comes in handy in that aspect, and it also has no cash values. It's just a low cost term policy for persons who want to purchase insurance with a fixed coverage at the lowest cost possible. Next, I'm going to move on to permanent life insurance. We also refer to it as whole life insurance in Barbados. Permanent life insurance, now this one is the one that would offer the most benefits. The coverage is also fixed, so that will not change. It usually goes for the longest period of time, so it can either go up to age 100 or for the lifetime of the insured, the person who would have bought the policy. It will generate cash values. And why this is important, as Lisa would have mentioned in her presentation, as you own a home and go along the years, you always have to do maintenance. And Joy would have also mentioned that as well. Maintenance is something that is you can't get away from. You will always be spending money. You always have paying out money. And where this comes in handy is that at the end of your mortgage, you have the option to have cash values where you can then use to say renovate your home or do something that you wanted to do but couldn't because you were maintaining your home and other expenses that happen along the way of throughout your life. So this one comes in very handy for persons who can afford it, so that they have that added benefit of having access to cash later in life, especially at that point when you really would like more cash. And then now on to general insurance. Now, general insurance is basically just two types of insurance that you would encounter when purchasing a home. Contractors or risk. This is at the stage where you're building. So when you're constructing a home, you will come to us and you will apply for the financial institution, the lending institution will recommend that you get this, and you will come to us and you will get contractors or risk insurance, and this protects your home because as Lisa would have mentioned, once you sign the contract, not Lisa, sorry, Anice would have mentioned, once you sign that contract, it is actually yours, and you don't want a case where your home is under construction, being built, and fire happens, the whole construction site is ruined, and you're not able to restart or do anything. So it protects you at the stage of building your home. And then as you complete your home is into completion and you're now going to move in to your home, you convert it over to homeowners insurance. So homeowners insurance would be the persons that are buying a house outright who are not building, or the persons who are completing their building and their construction and converting their contractors or risk insurance policy to a home insurance policy. Home insurance will cover fire and perils and the usual things that you would cover when you want to protect your home. And one of the things that I will mention is that a lot of persons usually underinsure their homes, or they never go back and get it valued. And why this is important is that every year you want to have your home revalued, because as we know in Barbados, the value always goes up. And you don't want a case that 5 years later or even 1 year later, your home that you would have bought and started at 300,000 is now valued 500,000. However, you never upgraded your insurance, and when something happens, we can only give you the value that the coverage amount that you have, which is the 300,000, because you only insured it for the 300,000 and never changed the value, which means you'll be harming yourself, and you don't want to be in that position. You always want to make sure that you keep the insurance in line with the value of your home, so that you are always covered in the event of any unforeseen circumstance. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. In closing, I will leave you with a quote from one of my favorite speakers, which is, "Without a sense of urgency, desire loses its value." And that's it for me, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. That was a very insightful presentation. Okay, guys, so that brings us to the end of the actual presentation part of our meeting today. The next part is going to be the question and answer segment. And I just want to remind everyone that there are 245 participants, so it's quite a number of people here today. Thank you all for coming. And I'm sure that everybody has a lot of questions to ask. As we would have done, we had some questions submitted at registration, so we will be giving priority to those questions, but we will be taking questions from the chat as well as we go along, because I know some people may have questions based on the presentations that we saw today. All right, so Robin, are we ready for our questions from?
Yes, we are ready.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the legal questions first. How long does the legal process take?
My mic is on music. Right. So lawyers like to give themselves a 3-month window to complete conveyances. So if you go to your lawyer, you will find that you will suggest a 3-month completion date, even though the transaction could be completed earlier, or if there are challenges, you may go. So aim for 3 months.
Okay. The next question was, do I need my attorney to complete the purchase of the land?
After everything I just said.
I think a lot of people are confused if you really need an attorney or not. Yeah.
Yeah, so the thing is, how much of this responsibility do you really want to take on? I just started by saying, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Now it's advisable, obviously, for you to get legal advice on it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's a legal process, really and truly. The conveyance of real estate in Barbados is a legal process, which includes various legal documentation, which must be completed and signed. So yes, you do need a lawyer.
Okay. Now a question for you, Dave. If you have life insurance, how can you use this as collateral when it comes to purchasing house and land?
When you go to the banker, which would be Kavita or whoever you have as your banker, at least at that point, once you start to go through the process of purchasing the house and land, you know exactly how much it costs and where you wanna go far from there. Then you come and if you already have it, you present your policy to them when it gets to that process and they ask you if you have coverage. You can present your policy to them. Or if you need to upgrade it, you can then come in and reassess it and upgrade it and then present it to the lending institution as collateral for to secure the loan.
Thanks, Dave. Another question I saw in the chat was, how long does the average home ownership transfer take? From the acceptance of the offer, mortgage approval, form acceptance, transfer, well, there's a lot. It seems, but I think it may vary.
So this is pretty much just the same time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by the time you get to your lawyer, so this, I'm seeing the question here too, from the acceptance of the offer, mortgage approval, and so on. So if you have your mortgage approved, and it's time for you to come to your lawyer, we will give you 3 months, same 3-month completion date from the finalizing and signing of the agreement.
Just to tack on to what Anice said, in terms of from the beginning of the mortgage approval, again, if you're fully transparent with the banker, you bring everything up front, you get your pre-qualification. Remember, the bulk of that is already done. When you then find the property, you're looking at maybe including the valuation time, because valuations take maybe about a week to 2 weeks, depending on what the valuer has to do. So give the bank at least about 2 to 3 weeks to hear from them. This is from the time you sit down and you have that discussion. And then the letters will be sent to Anice and her team, or whichever lawyer is that you choose is forwarded on your behalf by the bank.
Thanks, Kavita. We also had a lot of like miscellaneous questions as well, or not miscellaneous, but you couldn't fit them into a category necessarily, but some people want to know what are common mistakes that people first-time home buyers make.
Well, I can do a quick thing. I think first thing is letting your emotions take over. You know, they see this house and they want it, and they're like, but. I always tell people, if they're buts, don't do it. Sleep on it. If you wake up the next day and this house is still on your mind, go for it. But if it's things that keep butting, just don't do it. Bad financial planning. And I'm just going to skip these through. Not keeping enough, not giving enough equity in your property if after you've purchased it. But yeah, and you also have to do your due diligence. Comparables, we will do that for you. We call it comps, to make sure you're paying the right price, your valuation, your structure report. And just have a plan. If your plan changes, that's okay, but have a plan. And as the old people were saying, never put all your eggs in one basket. And this resonates so much so right now. You know, everybody has their, you know, tourism is kind of hit hard now. So always have 2 little eggs in other baskets.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to have a couple questions from the chat. One person asked, given the current market, is it better to purchase land and buy a home? Sorry, to purchase land and build a home, or to buy a land and home package? Is there anybody?
Well, I figured Jay would kind of pick up on that, but you know, I always, to be honest, right now, to buy a home or renovate is probably cheaper than to build a home. But if you build a home, you're going to get more of what you would like. But believe you me, you build your dream home, and then after you've done it, you're thinking, oh shoot, I should have done X, Y, and Z. But I think it's cheaper right now to buy a home and renovate than to build one.
Again, I think that goes back to the conversation. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Lisa was saying. You know, there the advantages and disadvantages of buying and building a home. You know, you gotta consider the cost. It's cheaper to, you want to buy a home and as opposed to building it. You know, you gotta look at your time frame as well. You know, and you also look at preference. With buying a home, a real estate agent, she could try her best to find a home that fits your needs as close as possible. But with building a home, now you can get exactly what you want. You know, so it's really up to preference, to be honest, and cost.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so another question that was asked, how feasible or rather ethical is it for the client to use the bank's attorney to act on their behalf?
Right, okay, so yes, that one definitely is for me. So we usually, our take on this is that the bank's interest and your interest as purchaser, they're pretty much aligned. So as you know, we're on the panel for most of the banks, and a lot of, in practice, a lot of the banks send their customers to us. And our first explanation to the customer is that there really is no conflict up front, because what you want is what the bank wants. You want to get a good title. You want to make sure that this property is good and that you own it properly. The bank wants to make sure that you get a good title and that they get good security for their money. So the interests are pretty much aligned. But what we also advise clients, banks, customers, is that if at any time we feel that there might be any conflict for any reason, we will have to terminate the engagement and ask the customer to go somewhere else. But those cases are few and far in between. So that's the first thing. The other reason the banks would advise their customers to come to the bank's lawyer is there's a benefit in terms of cost. As I said earlier, the fees are prescribed. But if the bank's lawyer is also working for the customer, there's a reduction in fee. And I mean, there is definitely a reduction in fee, which is calculated based on the purchase price and so on.
Okay. Sorry? Okay, so we'll take one more question from the chat for now. Okay. Sorry. What effect do you anticipate the recent COVID-19 pandemic will have on the market? And what factors should be considered to renegotiate with the seller?
I actually just did a blog on that because there were so many questions that people were asking. If you look at things globally, obviously everything's on a downturn. Obviously the banks are monitoring situations. And the fact is prices are going to have to go down. Valuations may change, but the simple answer to that right now is no one knows. No one really knows the answer. The longer this process goes on, the different effects it will take. So the best thing to do is just keep yourself aware of what's basically going on in the world. What happens in the UK and the US markets obviously affects us here. The banks are likely going to do, but Anice can more advise on that, more valuations. That's why valuations are so important. The valuers are actually all talking and having meetings as to, you know, what does the market do, because they need to assess what source values are as opposed to what the value is on the market as it stands. So as I said, the real answer to that is no one knows. But just keep an eye on the market, and as we go through this, we will take one day at a time.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. We also have a question in the chat, so our hand raised. So we're going to unmute Fiona, who can ask your question.
That's not a question. Hello, everyone. Speaking from Rotary Club of Barbados. Great presentations. Enjoyed all. A couple of things. So Anice, I know, and Lisa, I know, Jay and Kavita, hi. The question came up as to buying something as a group and whether, it makes sense. It sounds good in the beginning, but I just want people to consider death. Death is like the greatest equalizer of all. If you buy as a group and someone dies, then who really are you in bed with all of a sudden? So always remember, you have no control over the group all the time, number one. And number two, when you buy as a group, and I think Lisa mentioned this for sure, you have homeowners expenses, you have property expenses, let's call them, whether they're from the point of view of a homeowner in an association or land taxes and insurance for another purpose. Even if it's a cash purchase, these are expenses that have to be paid. Again, if one member of that group doesn't pay them, what happens? How do you take actions against everybody else? What happens to the group? Who is responsible? But guess what? The expense still has to be paid. So at all times, you have to say to yourself, do I know for sure how much control, and I think Anice used this, how much ownership do I have over the purchase and the ownership of my property and over my responsibilities? In terms of the question with the attorneys, and should I have the same attorney? And I note Anice's answer, which is correct. But you know, I always say, I go this one now, I take this one actually to nearly every religion that exists. You can only have, I'm going to come off, you can only have one master. So just appreciate at all times that if you're the client, you need to know that you have your questions answered. The bank will make sure it has its questions answered because they understand the game. You need to understand the game at the same pace and at the same time. So my caveat there is I'm a mortgage attorney. And therefore I was listening. I also teach. So I enjoyed all presentations. They were very thorough, and that's my 2 pence worth.
Thank you, President-elect Fiona. We appreciate the input.
Welcome.
I see
you can mute me again.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I also see Teresa has her hand raised, so I'll unmute her as well.
Good morning to everybody. I enjoyed the presentations this morning. They were quite informative. My question is though, I am currently, I already have a piece of land which I'm paying the financial institution for, but I'm trying to figure out now what is the best way to go forward in terms of building the house. What's the process like? Because I'm pretty much, I'm not au fait with anything in going forward in terms of finance. That's what I want to know. And then, well, Joy answered most of the questions in terms of getting the plan and all that stuff. But in terms of finance and insurance, because I do have an existing life insurance policy, but the bank had also advised that I get an additional policy to cover the land. So I'm trying to figure out now what is the best way going forward.
Thanks for your question. Over to the panelists to respond.
To tackle the question regarding the finance part of it going forward, remember each bank and each bank's policies are different. So you have to have a conversation with your banker directly and ask what is the reason or what is the risk that they see that they're asking for a second insurance policy. Based on what they've outlined to you, you'll know if you're able to do it. And then you will have a conversation with your financial advisor on the insurance side. But each bank is different. So you kind of have to then find out from them, why is it that their criteria has requested this? And then you will know your next step, because another bank may not need that, but they might use something else. So it's not a straight answer across the board. It's very specific to you and your situation, the documents that you've brought to them and you've shown them that lets them know, well, I detect a bit of a risk. So this is how I'm going to cover that end of it.
Kavita actually answered the question correctly in terms of the insurance side as well. It all depends. So based on what Kavita said, she actually answered my piece correctly as well. Or you can also, I would advise that you can also speak to your advisor as well as your financial institution, so that both of them can give you the advice as to why you need what you need.
Okay. So the next question, what relates to, I guess this person doesn't have a credit history, but at the same time, a lot of people want to know how to make themselves more attractive to lending institutions. So give us your advice.
Save and budget rigorously. I know that's like asking for the moon right now, given the current economic climate. And I'm a millennial, I fully get it. But you really have to save and budget and commit. And what we tell people is you don't need a massive loan. You don't need a car loan, or you don't need anything big. You can actually start with a classic credit card, a $1,000 credit card. I know credit cards are not the devil. If you are advised how to use them, they actually come in very handy. Use them in the event of an emergency. Those sort of things. The bank is looking to see that you are a stable person to lend, and we don't have to worry about you a few years down the line. So in terms of a credit history, a $1,000 limit on a credit card, or even a $500 limit, just start there. And that helps you to build credit history and savings. Every little bit counts. And what I usually tell persons, you already know how much your bills come to every month. Once you know your bills, you know what your expenses are, your savings really should be as a deduction in your head. So if you know, all right, I can afford to deduct $200 a month for savings, put it as a deduction directly from your salary if you can. Put it in the credit union, in the bank, wherever it is that, you know, you primarily borrow, and keep it there. Have it going there that you forget about it. You don't think about it. So when it is time and you look back, you're like, wow, that was there all this time, you know? So that's just my advice at this point.
Very good advice. We also had another question, I guess for you as well, Kavita. So this person says, say you have extra funds to pay your mortgage early, so could be finished in 5 to 7 years, but you also want another home for rental income. Should you pay the mortgage first or take the extra funds and buy the investment property now?
That depends on the contract that you have on your existing mortgage. So most banks do have a prepayment clause. It is typically, if you give notice, they may have a leeway. I can't speak for every financial institution, but that's the contract that you need. In that discussion, when you signed your original letter, it would have outlined what the terms for that prepayment are. Now, yes, you can absolutely use equity to invest in another piece of property. Again, that's depending on your financial institution. Most institutions tend to have a 2 residential mortgage allowability within their guidelines. So it is not impossible to use your equity from one property into another one. However, you do need to investigate what your contract says, what it allows you, if you have to give, like, say, 90 days notice without penalty, that sort of thing. That's clearly outlined in your contract. Once you're not breaching your contract, then there really should be no issue in using your equity in another investment.
Thank you, Kavita.
Okay, thanks, Kavita. All right, so I actually have a question. So you know that sometimes, you know, you might have an auntie or, you know, daddy, mommy has an extra piece of land and wants to give you or give you permission to build on the land. In the event that something goes south, who owns the house? Because we know that's a common situation. So who owns the house when somebody gives you permission to build on their land?
Right, that's a very common situation indeed. And just remember that land is defined as real estate and anything that is fixed to it permanently. I started with that because if somebody says that they own land, it means they own the land and anything that's fixed to it. So if you build something, if you fix something onto your granny's land, you have just improved the value of your granny's land significantly. Where does that leave you? It depends on what arrangements you had with your granny. My advice is always, before you start to improve somebody else's property, you should seek legal advice. You should have some firm arrangement in place. Because if granny is ready to sell her property, she might not need to ask you a question. But what she is selling is the improved value, property with improved value. So the long and short of that is, the house belongs to the person who owns the land, as long as the house is fixed. I'm not talking about chattel houses. I'm talking about a fixed structure. It belongs to the person who owns the land. That's the short answer.
Okay, thank you, Anice. All right, so a couple of other questions from the chat. We have 2 questions from one person, but they're related, so I'll just ask them together. This one is directed to Kavita. Is there a minimum age that lenders will require in order for a person to purchase a home? Also, must they be a quote-unquote permanent employee as opposed to a contract or temporary worker in order to qualify?
Okay, so that's a twofold question. In terms of minimum age, you should be legally able to borrow. We generally don't like to pass the age of retirement for persons who are employed. As they will go to show, your pension will significantly decrease. So always keep your retirement age in the back of your head as your cap. There are instances where you can exceed that age and it requires specific circumstance. So that is an exception to the rule. Now, in terms of the second part of that question, it was about qualifying, and just refresh my memory what it was.
It was if you can qualify as a contract or temporary worker, if you have to be a permanent employee.
Again, it goes back to stability. So there are some government workers that we know have been temporary for over 10 years. If you are in a position that is like that, again, it's a case-by-case basis. Do we foresee that that is an industry that will fall anytime soon? Is it something that we estimate you will get laid off in the next 6 months? Is your contract always renewable? Because there are persons who work solely on contract and it's renewed every single year. And they've been doing that for the last maybe 5, 6 years. So everything is basically taken in context. I wouldn't necessarily say, yes, you have to only be permanent, but it really does depend on the stability of the position that you're in, the industry that you're in, and if we foresee any risk relating to that industry.
All right, thank you. All right, so these questions were both submitted, and in the chat. I guess a lot of us end up watching HGTV and see a lot of stuff about tiny homes. So we've had a couple questions. Would you be supported by financial institutions in a case where you want to build a home from containers? Like, would they be willing to finance like the alteration, the retrofitting of these containers? And then I guess that would be for Kavita. And then I would ask the follow-up question when you're finished.
It depends on the collateral that you're willing to offer the bank. When we discuss a mortgage in terms of, in this context, you are looking or seeking to use the land as collateral or the property as collateral, which is fixed, as Anice said. That is something that will increase in value if you build on it. And that is the collateral that we're seeking to hold should something go wrong. Back to the presentation, remember we were discussing in the ability the bank has to get back its funds. How sound is that collateral? How structurally able are we to sell it? If it's a case where you're working on your tiny home, at this point in time, I don't personally know of any institution that is using those as collateral, but you may be able to find some institutions that are willing to use perhaps land separately that you have as collateral because it exceeds the value of that tiny home. Or if you have some other form of collateral that you can put up, a portion of life insurance, cash surrender, as Dave was mentioning, different things will play into how sound your collateral is, will then be able to tell us if that's something we can finance.
All right, thank you. So then the follow-up question, if someone has decided to do the container home or the tiny home, would be to Jay about the integrity of the structure. Someone was asking, what do we think about the integrity of the structure? Someone else asked if there are any particular codes or advice in regards to the container homes and tiny homes.
In terms of the codes, Barbados, we have building codes from, I would say, 2013, it's not corrected. But the problem with these building codes is that they're not enforced. So what you tend to see is a lot of, basically anybody that has a lot of experience in construction, they're building homes. And that, because it's not enforced, that can be a problem. We can look at the example in, for instance, Antigua and Barbuda, where Barbuda was almost completely wiped out because majority of the homes weren't structurally sound. In terms of the container homes, this is a modern trend that you see popping up all around the world. There are advantages to this, like for instance, the homes are cheaper, they're more eco-friendly. However, the safety of the structure still depends on the reinforcement. Because if you're going to put down a container home to live in, you still need to make sure that the foundation that you're using is reinforced enough to suit the home, and you're still going to need to reinforce the container based on, so you're still going to need to seek out an architect, an engineer. You can't just put down a container home and move in just like that. It wouldn't be advisable.
Okay, thank you. All right, one last question from the chat before we go back to our
So before you start
question.
here, Vicky, we also had a very similar question about someone who was resuming construction on an incomplete structure, right? So they wanted to know what they should pay attention to. No, they're trying to continue construction on the home. Could you just talk about that, Jay?
Okay. Again, it depends on the length that the home was was paused for. So I assume that if you have paused the construction, you would have things like exposed steel and that kind of thing. Well, exposed steel is not always great because it weakens the structure and the strength of the home. So you may need to change the steel. But generally, I don't think much changes would be needed to be done. You know, the best thing to do is to have an engineer or even the same general contractor. He can review the property and he will let you know exactly what would be needed to be changed or good to go and continue to sue.
Okay, thanks.
All right, yeah, just one more question from the chat before we go back to our submitted questions. Kavita, is there a required length of time you have to be working as a permanent employee to qualify for a mortgage?
Again, depends on your institution that you're going to. Generally, you'd like to at least be employed for at least 2 to 3 years, receiving stable income in that capacity. There really is no one size fit all. For example, for professionals, lawyers, doctors, it's a little different because they start working basically for themselves. Most times, I could be wrong. Anice, you'll let me know. But yeah, you just want to see that over a period of time, 2 to 3 years is usually a good sign that it is a stable employment and that you're receiving consistent income during that time.
Okay, so back over to the submitted questions. We did have a lot of COVID questions, but I think Lisa touched on that earlier. So the next question was, how do you know if a plot of land is worth the asking price?
Good question, but that's where the comps or comparisons come in. So if we're going to make an offer on a piece of land, let's say in St. Thomas, I will pull up from our market data that we have, you know, what has land in the last 5 years in that area sold for. And then it also depends, I think Jay had mentioned, you know, where is it close to supermarkets and things like that. So comparisons help us essentially. And while that helps us or guides us to the price, it also depends on the person selling it. The person selling it could say, well, I want $50 a square foot. If not, I'm not selling it. Or it could be a situation that there has been someone pass or a divorce and they just want to get rid of it. So comps help us, and then the actual situation of the vendor or the seller will also dictate the price.
And price is always negotiable to an extent, right?
Always. People ask me that every day. Is price negotiable? Everything in life is negotiable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We also had a question about the current prices of land per square foot.
That depends on where it is. Okay. If you are the West Coast on the beach, you can access $700 a square foot, right? That's prime real estate. If you're looking in St. John, and I'm not picking because I know people get very particular on their parishes, but like, you know, like out in the boondocks, there's nothing around. You could be looking as low as $6, $8 a square foot. So it really depends on the location.
Okay. Then we had a question about registered and unregistered land and what the difference was.
Sorry, repeat that. Registered or?
Registered and unregistered land.
To be honest, I'm not sure what they are referring to.
So I can answer that question actually. So it's pretty much a system of ownership of land in Barbados. So picture at the beginning, we've had just title deeds and old documents, which represents your ownership or the chain of title. So what has happened over the last few years is that the government, the administration, has gone into a system, is trying to put land in a system where there is a registered process and there is a different sort of title, where the registrar will certify title instead of vendors having to show several years of ownership and chain of ownership. So register title is a registration process which the registration office is undertaking, and there are different sections that they're doing it in different sections. So the different sections of Barbados which are already completed. So when you're going to buy land in certain areas, what you're looking for is not a conveyance deed. You won't be signing over a normal conveyance deed. You won't be doing your title search based on years and years of documents. You'll be looking at a certificate of title which is issued by the registrar. And in that system, the registrar would have done their investigation on the title and they're certifying the title instead. So that's pretty much it. It's just a difference in how the land itself is actually owned.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. So I'm going to take one more question from the submitted list, and then we'll go back to Vicky. This person is single with an entry-level salary. They want to purchase their own home, but they want to know how feasible is that. And then we also had a question about someone, you know, they're in their late 20s and they want to know how premiums are, I guess, made up of, because they're saying that they don't want to wait till premiums get too crazy for them. So maybe that's a Kavita, those are Kavita questions.
In terms of the premiums, I think that would be more Dave's question,
Oh,
but
okay.
in terms of the first part of it, in terms of how feasible is it, I would advise, again, let's have that conversation with your banker regarding what their guidelines will allow. As I said, normally 40% of your income would be taken into consideration. If your savings can definitely provide a buffer, then yes. If you don't have savings right now, I suggest you start on the path first for savings to make sure that you have, remember, all those costs that we discussed, that they can be easily covered. So for someone in an entry-level position, being single is, yes, joint incomes do help, but at the same time, you still need to make sure that should something happen, you yourself can carry the weight of it. So that's definitely, you need to sit down and have a budget conversation, I believe, at this point. And once your budget has been outlined, you'll know how long it will take for you to actually get to the point of purchasing or constructing.
Can you ask the part about premiums again?
Yeah, sure. They said they're in their late 20s and they wanted to know how much time do I have to hurry and get a mortgage before my premiums get too crazy. So I think really the question was how are premiums made up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Premiums are usually calculated by the actuaries that work for the insurance companies. So they're made up of, it's a complex calculation. However, in terms of purchasing insurance prior to having your mortgage, the sooner the better, because the cost is really, really low in your younger ages, where you can then purchase a large amount. So for instance, at 20, I may be able to purchase $500,000. Just an example purpose. I may be able to purchase $500,000 of coverage for 150 versus at 35 or 40, where that same 500,000 now may cost me $300 or more. So it all depends. The sooner you can have a discussion with a financial advisor, that they can find a really good cost, a really good coverage and cost for you, where it can, even if you buy more, because when you're younger, you buy a large coverage. Whenever you get to the point of purchasing your home, you already have probably even more than you need for the mortgage, and that puts you in a better position because, one, the younger you start, the cash values start earlier, and also if you have a large life policy, when should something happen to yourself throughout the duration of the mortgage, you have a family, the remainder goes to your family rather than just clearing off the mortgage. So it makes it easier for you to have your coverage sorted out the earlier you start, and then you can plan the rest of your mortgage and dreams going forward to suit.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, so a couple more questions were asked in the chat. So to Anice, in instances where the legal process has gone on for much longer than 3 months, do you have any recommendations for alternative courses of action?
Right. So the courses of action are actually set out in the agreement itself. So by 3 months, I assume this person means the fixed completion date. So ordinarily, you have a completion date which is written into the agreement. And as I said, lawyers like to aim for 3 months. Now, if you've gone over that completion date, and so if you've gone over that completion date, the agreement has remedies on both sides worked in. So if the failure to complete is as a result of the vendor not doing what they're supposed to do, the purchaser has certain remedies which is written in. And one of those things is you can actually go to court and sue for specific performance, right? So you can actually, that remedy is available to you. If the purchaser isn't completing, the vendor has the option of sending, well, this is all on assumption that the either party is ready to complete. So once a party is ready to complete, that party obviously can take certain actions. If the purchaser isn't ready to complete and the vendor is, the vendor can send notice to the purchaser, giving the purchaser 28 days to complete, or otherwise the deposit will be forfeited. Now, as I said, these things are actually written into the agreement, so there are recourses available. The completion date has arrived and the transaction hasn't been completed due to default of either party.
All right, thanks. Okay, and another question to you, Anice. Where a prospective purchaser is asked to provide, well, actually, no, that's actually Kavita, sorry. Where a prospective purchaser is asked to provide a valuation of the property to a lender, would the lender accept a valuation provided by the vendor, especially if recently prepared by a licensed surveyor?
Depends on your banks and what panel they have for their valuers. So each bank is different. There are some banks that have a portal that they use of random valuers. So you just send a request and a valuer will be contacted on your behalf. The lender doesn't know who the valuer is, and only when the customer gets a call that they know who that valuer would be coming to do the assessment would be. So it really depends if the bank, if that person is on their panel and if they're willing to accept that valuation. But each institution, it will work differently.
Okay, thanks. And Lisa, is this the comparative data you would have referred to earlier? Is it accessible generally, or do we need to go through an agent to get this information?
I mean, it's accessible if you go through properties on the market and you can see, I should say advertised, but that doesn't necessarily give you what they've sold for. So the data that we get is internal data that we compile. So I guess the simple answer is no, but I mean, I have what I term as an agent cheat sheet, which just gives you an average of what different things cost. So I'm happy to share that with anyone. It just gives an average idea.
Okay, all right, thank you. We are actually nearing the end of our time, so I am going to just take one more question. Okay, so since we have this economic climate right now, I think this question is actually very relevant. What protection is in place for people with mortgages who may lose their job some years into the mortgage? You know, some people are actually losing their jobs now or getting salary cuts, etc. So what protection is in place for those persons?
Well, currently I know the banks are offering moratoriums for persons who have been laid off, for example. I think the initial start was 3 months for most institutions, and it can be extended depending on the particular circumstance. The moratorium just allows you to be able to defer your payments until you're able to get back a job. as I always tell people, the bank is not in the business of selling property. So that is usually the very, 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 very last resort. That costs us money to do that. So generally you will have several conversations with your bank regarding payment methods that are feasible for you. You'll have a second discussion regarding your current circumstance, in terms of if you have to cash out, any policies or liquidate any term deposits and things like that, that you may need to provide some sort of buffer. You also have the option of interest-only payments. So you can take advantage of that for a period of maybe 3 to 6 months. Again, each institution is different. They have their ways of handling it. But those are just some of the ways off the top of my head that you can provide relief in situations like that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kavita, and thank you to the entire panel for answering the questions so thoroughly and eloquently. So I want to say again, we did have a lot of questions, and we thank everyone for their questions. The information for the panelists will be provided in an email sometime after, including a summary of our first Pass the Mic session, Millennial Money Moves. That was our first session. A lot of people asked about saving towards getting the mortgage. So that savings part would have actually been covered then. So we'll include that in the email as well. So I will now hand over to Maya for our vote of thanks.
Dr. Vicky. Good morning, everyone, specially invited presenters, members of Barbados, and our most valued Zoom audience. It is a pleasure and indeed an honor to be asked to deliver the vote of thanks in this final installment. But from one of my favorite authors, St. Ambrose, is no duty is my thanks. And in light of that statement, and on behalf of the Rotaract Club of Barbados, we would like to extend a hearty vote of thanks to our presenters who have taken the time to share invaluable, enlightening, and practical advice as it relates to home ownership, or as we colloquially say in Barbados, owning piece of the rock. Sincere and deep sense of appreciation for your excellent coverage of the practical aspects of real estate industry and practical insights of home ownership. To Mrs. Anice Granville, we acknowledge our gratitude to the wealth of experience, property development attorney, and I know many were taking notes. The practical and legal shared are truly invaluable. To Rotaractors Dave, Jay, and Peter, I know when I say this, I speak on behalf of the entire Rotaract Club of Barbados, our very own Cranberries. We express a sense of pride and indeed gratefulness for your detailed knowledge today within your various fields of expertise, engineering, insurance, and banking, inspired by each and every one of your contributions. I would like to say that an event like this does not happen overnight. And it would be remiss of me not to highlight the efforts of Director Robin and her team, highly motivated to preparing this. Thank you, everyone. And to our presenters, we are most gracious for your contributions.
Thank you.
Over to you, President Kareem, for the notices. I'll unmute you now.
Good afternoon, well, it's morning. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me well? I know I sometimes have challenges with the web, so can everybody hear me clearly? Just indicate, yeah? Perfect. After that vote of thanks, I don't know if I should go afterwards and say, well done to the Pass the Mic committee for today's session. I thoroughly enjoyed every single presentation and the very engaging Q&A session. Just a few notices. Next slide, Jamar. So up first, go back. Up first, our sister club, the Rotaract Club of Barbados West, they have a panel discussion today with Dr. Kay Lewis. I'm talking about navigating COVID-19. All invited is at 4 o'clock today via Zoom. If you need information about that, I can send you an email, so reach out to me. Our second notice is a reminder for the Cranberries that our Around the World in 30 Days, that's tomorrow at 12 p.m. noon. And this will be a partnership with the Rotaract Club of Dombivli, Sun City in India. And this is going to be a fellowship meeting where we get to know fellow Rotary. This is the Master Committee and seeking to mobilize a few volunteers to assist with the final cosmetic adjustments for the mass to be donated. This is an initiative of our sister club, the Rotaract Club of South Barbados, and their sponsored Rotary Club. And they're asking persons to work next week, Thursday and Friday, for 2-hour shifts between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. If you're interested, please reach out to me. Along the same vein of collaboration, we'll also be partnering with them for our first virtual games night. This will be spearheaded by the Club Service Committee, and the tentative date for that is next week, Saturday, May 23rd. So stay tuned for more details. The final notice is on the school tablets project. As we continue to socially distance ourselves, schools have been shut down and they've moved to e-learning platform, more particularly G Suite. And to some extent, some students are being left behind. So we have partnered with our sponsor Rotary Club and the Ministry of Education to provide tablets to students. So if you're interested in knowing more about the project or to donate, please reach out to us at club@rotaractbarbados.org. Next slide. I'll end by saying, if you like sessions like these, we invite you to join our network of young professionals. Rotaract is a brand in Barbados where we have 4 clubs. If you're interested, please send us an email at club@rotaractbarbados.org, and also follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Rotaract Barbados. And to this extent, I pass it over to you, Madam Moderator, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Cream. I actually don't have much to say. I know it's almost 12 o'clock, so I'll let everyone go get their lunch. But thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you took something from the session today.
Okay.
Hey, Robin.
Yes, you're
Oh. Well done, Robin. You did an amazing job.
Thank you. I have to thank my team. They did.
Yeah.
They made it amazing.
You can stop recording, sorry.
Oh yeah, I forgot.